Good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Welcome to the October 28th Washougal City Council Workshop Meeting. Rose, could you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Lindsay,
Here.
Councilmember Freeman,
Greenlee.
Freeman,
Freeman?
She's going around.
going the other way, opposite way. Councilmember McDaniel,
Here.
Councilmember Shoemaker,
Here.
Councilmember Plinsky,
Here.
Councilmember Greenlee,
Here.
Councilmember Boger.
Here.
Sure.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public that would like to address council this evening? Okay, possibly not your only opportunity in this meeting. Moving along, our first presentation this evening, RTC update. Melissa, good evening, welcome.
Thank you. Well, I was asked to come. This was not a normally scheduled visit, so I'm not quite sure what I'm being asked to present because my next visit is in December. So,
I can help with that.
Dave?
okay,
I made the request,
okay,
and you and I have subsequently talked about this, but
Right.
I wanted you to be able to share with my colleagues on the council what was done in the way of that vote on the
the
Fourth Lane
MTIP and all
Bus
that.
Rapid Transit Project.
Okay,
There's a great deal of misunderstanding about what's going on there.
okay, that's kind of what I thought, so I just thought everything. Let me see. Can you hear me all fine?
I think
Okay.
it's good it closer, just to,
Ours.
yeah, just drag it to you.
So it picks up on the recording, I think that.
Okay. I guess we had a group of second graders before our last council meeting, and one of them bent the mic all the way, and we had real bad static. Anyway, RTC serves two functions, one federal and one state. The federal function is Metropolitan Planning Organization, MPO, which is just Clark County. The second is a state function under growth management called Regional Transportation Planning Organization, which also includes Skamania and Klickitat counties. By federal rules, RTC must coordinate with Metro, Portland's MPO, on regional transportation planning issues, which is why even if RTC or certain members of RTC want to build a new crossing over the Columbia River, Metro must also buy off on that, or there is no new crossing of the Columbia River. C-Trans district is not county-wide by a 2000 vote. C-Trans serves Vancouver's urban growth area plus the cities of Battleground, Yakult, Washougal, Camas, Ridgefield, and La Center. Okay, then what we discussed, and I think this is the right one. I want to make sure. Okay, our goal on the RTC is to review everybody's requests from the counties. That's Washougal, that's Camas, everybody for budget. And yes, there's light rail in there, and there's BRT components for funding in there.
So is it 7 cities?
Pardon?
The 7 cities?
Yes.
And you don't have, do you have the responsibility? Oh, never mind, no, of course not.
JPAC is another
To the county.
advisement organization that recommends information to us. Like I said before, every city, when they have projects, they fill out one of these applications and send it in, and it gets rated and a scoring. And there's project points, of safety. Is it a safety issue? They get high priority listings. And so we've been talking for a few months since the 2035 plan for traffic and all that seemed a little high. We asked staff a few months back to go back and revise it.
In Camas?
No,
RTC.
throughout RTC, our whole RTC regional plan. So on the October 1st meeting, we had to approve what I call the wish list for funding that had to be put in and sent in to the state. And October 1st was our deadline to do that. Like I said in the past, once you take something off of this list, it's off the list for this round. It's a 2-year cycle for funding, okay? So once it's off the list, it's off. It can't be put back on. Now, regardless of what's going on with C-Tran or BRT or Light Rail, the majority of us left that funding in place, even though there's no money right now for it. There's also advisories that the county commissioners put out, you know, so dependent on what those, how people vote on those, we can always take it off next year if we want to, or the year after, you know, but right now, it's kind of a moot point, so we just left it on there. Is that,
Precisely.
okay,
Can I clarify one thing?
Sure.
Was there an advisory vote in 2012 on this subject?
on 2012, no, there's,
For RTC?
for RTC,
No, for the bus rapid transit project.
It wasn't advisory.
Wasn't
no,
it?
that was C-Tran. That didn't have anything to do with RTC.
Okay, has there ever been an advisory vote on bus rapid transit?
Not that I'm aware of. The commissioners are doing it this year,
Okay.
so,
So
you know,
as I understand it, what you did was to keep the funding on there until you could figure out what the results of the advisory vote will be on 5 November.
right, if you take it off before that and the people say, yes, we want it, then we've just negated what the will of the
The
people.
current
Paul, I think you
opportunity.
explained that to me, but I wasn't picking up on it that night.
Yeah,
I had a subsequent conversation with Melissa
right,
in some detail and got to it.
yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I have a question about the advisory vote.
Sure.
How do you see your vote for Camas Washougal as our representative? If the advisory vote is yes to that proposition, that would mean that the county commissioners would expect an opportunity for the people to vote yes or no. You follow that train of thought? A
Yeah.
yes vote on this proposition means, let me just read it.
Go ahead.
I happened to bring it so that I didn't, because, you know, propositions can be so confusing. So it's advisory vote number 2, bus rapid transit advisory vote. Should the Clark County Board of Commissioners approve proposition, should the Clark County Board of Commissioners approve proposed resolution 2013-07-19, which opposes every bus rapid transit project in Clark County unless it is first supported by a majority of the voters in a county-wide advisory vote of the people.
Right.
So if you say yes to that,
Mm-hmm.
that says the people want to vote.
Right.
So my question to you is, if the November 5 Clark County Advisory Vote number 2, Bus Rapid Transit Advisory Vote, I wrote down the question, results in a yes, will you, as the Camas Washougal representative, work to remove BRT from RTC's list of projects?
No, wait, if by saying yes, doesn't that mean that the people want it?
No, it just means that well, that's a good point. What that means if they say yes is that it needs to go to a vote.
Yes.
So you would, at this point, you would
Then it-
continue to let it ride.
Let it ride,
That makes sense?
Makes
yes,
sense to me.
Because then they would, if this advisory vote says yes, then the vote would go to the people.
yes.
And if the people reject it,
And if the people reject it, then we
Then-
take it off, yeah.
Then your vote would be removed from the list. Do you
Right.
have an opinion? Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. And I know Washougal does because we've all voted in the same fashion
Right,
to say only if the people say yes.
right.
Do you have any opinion? I mean, there's how many members on that RTC
Oh,
committee? There's a lot.
we have to have
And
9 for a quorum, I think.
9.
I think 9
And
or
there's-
7.
9 for a quorum.
Yeah, I think there's
So,
12, something like
There's
that.
only 12. I thought it was more. That was closer.
No, we have a lot of people others that come that don't have voting privileges.
Oh, true. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah, we
there's,
have one on those. On
Yeah.
Citran.
so,
So do you have any feel for how those people will vote based on this advisory vote?
no, I don't. I honestly don't. It depends on, come election day, how things turn out.
Yeah.
Okay, on the advisory vote, is it a simple majority or is it a threshold?
I was going to ask that. Is it a
Because what
super or
makes it-
simple?
I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a simple majority, isn't it? Who's got?
they wrote it. I don't know.
It's advisory, it's symbolic.
Advisory, it's
Yeah.
symbolic, and it would
So
be.
it's non-binding, yeah.
It's not binding, but so it doesn't matter. I mean, it could be 19 to 20, or 20 to 19.
Yeah,
Correct.
Yes.
well, now this vote, you're talking about this vote?
Any of the advisory
These
votes,
are
I
the-
just wondered
yeah,
if
this is
they,
a county-wide
right, I just
vote.
wondered if there was a threshold.
They're not
I-
Majority.
binding, but they do.
Simple
matter.
majority.
It's
They
a
do
simple
matter.
majority.
I would like to read one paragraph from the October minutes. Mr. Ham said there have been different interpretations of the vote last November. One interpretation is that it is against the project, and the voters have said it should not happen. Another interpretation is that the voters said we're not passing judgment on the project itself, but we're telling you we do not want you to increase your sales taxes in order to fund that project. Those are the two competing interpretations. The Attorney General's office was asked to render an opinion that in the absence of C-Trans seeking a sales tax increase under RCW 81.104, would the agency have to ask the voters for permission to proceed with the project? The answer to that was no. It does not have to do that. At the present time, C-Tran is proceeding with the development of the project. At the August board meeting, on a 6-3 vote, Commissioners Milky and Medora were in the minority. Action was taken to authorize Mr. Ham to represent to the board that for C-Tran, this is an active project and that they should continue to pursue and I don't have my glasses, sorry.
You borrow mine?
Pursue its wishes to seek funding to continue the design and the environmental work to bring the project forward. It is not a decision to construct it. They still have the financing to put together an application to put it to the FTA, but there is expectation that those pieces can come together. This funding will assist in that process. So, I don't know how that kind of throws another little wrench into the you're on C-Tran, so
Any other questions for Melissa?
that, yeah. Just wanted to clarify.
Answer what you need at this point?
Absolutely.
I mean, if the will of the people say no, they don't want light rail, they don't want BRT, anything like that, then I would think that the board would respect that.
I have no confidence that that will happen. And that's why I wanted to clarify this tonight.
Okay.
Thank you very much for coming. I know it's an imposition.
No, that's fine.
I appreciate it very much, and I suspect my colleagues do.
Okay. Anything else?
Thanks, Melissa.
All right, thank you. Have a good
It
evening.
clears up a lot of confusion.
Okay, thanks.
Now you can get home and
Okay,
make dinner.
moving on to new business, Public Works, setting public hearings for CDBG applications. Good evening, Rob.
Good evening, Mayor, Council.
You've got some money you want to go after.
Yes. First, we need to set some public hearings for the CDBG process. So that's what we're looking for, action from council tonight. So staff has gotten together and discussed several projects that could meet the CDBG criteria. Bringing forward one to council for their consideration, a utility project between 32nd and 34th, combining a water line improvement with a sidewalk improvement. They serve many functions. First, J Street, is a walking route for children to the Gauze and high school. So we'd like to improve the safety of that, and as well as increasing the water customer service for water. There's low water pressure, and it's an older 2-inch steel line, so we'd like to upgrade that to an 8-inch line. Go to the next. So we've estimated the project about $580,000. What we're proposing is to apply for a $280,000 CDBG grant, $300,000 from city funds, so that would comprise the 580. Of that 300,000, 270,000 would be from the water fund, and 30,000 from transportation funds. This area would be CDBG eligible. It's about 49% low income, which is a little higher than their 43% threshold. And both the sidewalk project and the water line are listed on the city's master plans. Rose, if you have the map, you can pull that up and, sorry. There's a PDF I had.
No. Okay.
Top right.
There should be tabs at the top.
Page 7.
Dropbox.
We have to go to the
Is it the
Dropbox.
area?
Yeah, we'll go to the Dropbox.
Okay.
There we go.
Nice.
So there's the project in pink is the proposed project, and shown in red is the 2002 CDBG sidewalk project that was done between 32nd and 28th, about 11 years ago.
That's the existing crosswalk just above I Street right now.
Correct.
So I'm showing this.
Questions?
The crosswalk on 32nd, will that be protected with a light and a safety island or no?
We're proposing what's going to be very similar to 20th Street. We're doing some rapid flashing beacons that'll be pedestrian activated in a center refuge. For,
Excellent, thank you.
Rob, where would we put that mid-block?
Well, we looked at the locations, and there's driveway constraints and other issues that make it problematic to place it either right at J or right at I. So that's why we're tentatively proposing to place it there. There may be a better location ultimately, but it's not going to work very well right at I or J.
Okay.
As I understand it, you're getting out of current income and nothing from the reserves.
Correct. Yes.
Way to go. That's the first one I've seen like that, first CDBG project I've seen like that. Nice growth.
We've actually been successful in most of them without taking them from reserves.
Well, we set up, a couple of years ago, we set up the Transportation Capital Facilities Fund by taking some money from general fund reserves and placing it in the Transportation Capital Fund so that you had earmarked those dollars for transportation projects. We have used that fund the last couple of cycles with CDBG.
That was the 500,000, right?
Right, or 600,
750.
750 maybe. I can't remember what the initial seed money was, but it was in that magnitude. This project is a combination utility and transportation project. So it's a little bit higher number than our last couple of CDBG applications. It will leverage some of our utility money that we're already have already budgeted. But some of the CDBG money will help offset some of the utility costs, but the lion's share of the CDBG money will really go to offset general fund costs, so that we only have to use $30,000 out of that transportation capital fund, and that preserves it as long as we can, so maybe 1 or 2 more cycles we'll have funds there.
Okay, not perfect, but a nice job anyway.
The funds are definitely coming from where you've allocated and go to for these purposes, so.
Don't include me in the U on that one, will you?
Okay. Paul?
The water main, will that be in the street or under the sidewalk?
In the street.
So the
So you'll need to excavate the street. And there's a pretty good-sized main that runs down J Street, if I remember correct. I mean, 30, is there a big,
This is on J, so you're talking about.
yeah, this is
connecting.
on J. So if this is an 8-inch main, what does it connect to?
What Trevor-
14-inch steel that makes its way up to 32nd.
Up
or
32nd?
2 lower reservoirs.
Okay,
Yeah.
great, thank you.
Jennifer?
You have the 32nd Street crossing delineated on the map. Can you tell us a little bit about what we're expected to see there?
You know, I just had a chance to print some of these out, so I'll pass them around. They're very similar to what we'll see at 20th and E when we do our sidewalk project. So it's a pedestrian signage, but it's got a pedestrian activated push button.
Okay.
So LED lights that flash, and both on the sides and in the refuge. So it's pretty effective at stopping traffic.
That's wonderful. I like that. I live right over there. I can't come up with the name of the road. Where the new little sidewalk's gonna go over by the school district.
Oh, the
Sunset.
Yes, thank you. The same type of thing?
Same type of thing we'll be putting
Good.
at that intersection.
Very good. Where's this one going? I didn't catch that. At
Well-
this proposed crosswalk? Excellent. Are you going to do this, I mean, if it's approved, is this going to be done during the summer when school's out?
Well, unfortunately, the way the CDBG funding cycle works, you usually don't get approval till August. So
Uh-huh.
you're basically doing November through January,
The
December.
rainy season?
Yeah, to type
While the kids are
construction.
at school?
Yeah, unfortunately, some
And
of
it's
that's
raining.
timing.
Dave?
You're going from a 14-inch main down 32nd, you're gonna put in an 8-inch main where you've had a 2-inch main. So a 2-inch main gave you greater pressure coming from the 14.
We'll still have sufficient pressure. We'll eliminate all the leaks on that line. And then services, they're old services. We just need to, it's time. It's about a 60-year-old line. So
Yeah.
we need to upgrade all those services and mains.
When you said steel pipe, first thing I thought was post-war.
Yeah, 1952, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you won't have a problem that's gonna require additional pumping?
No.
Okay.
The pressure will actually be the same. It's actual volume upsizing as far as hydrant flow and fire protection. Pressure would be the same out of a 2-inch pipe as it would a 64-inch.
I'll have to sit down with you to figure out how you do that.
It's gravity.
So Rob, surface improvements on J Street, if we're going into the street, are we only improving around that portion, or are we gonna attempt to do any
Yeah, it was.
additional rebuild
I
of the
think as
street?
everybody knows, it was just chip sealed. So we will just saw cut and replace with new asphalt the trench cuts and the new water line. We'll try to, as much as possible, avoid touching the existing chip seal.
With the sidewalk though, are we gonna get any gutters in those, any storm water?
Yes, we will have to treat any added impervious.
Okay. Any other questions? So this is for setting the public hearing. So this just gives you background for the public hearing that will be coming forward. Roger?
So along J Street by the high school, there's those big ditches. I don't know what you officially call those.
Swales?
Soil.
Swales?
Swales. That's
Just east of 34th or further?
Yes.
Okay. I
32nd,
think those are just
34th.
ditches, if I recall.
right at the high school.
Yeah.
North side of
We're not
39.
going that far though?
Nope.
Stopping
No,
before the
there's
high school.
there's kind of an existing
Yeah, that little
asphalt path that
asphalt path.
kids use. Well, sometimes they use.
There's kind of a maximum scope with these CDBG projects unless you have a lot of other funding sources. There was some CDBG money, for example, in the E Street project, but the most that they'll grant you, if you're successful, is 300. We're applying for 280. And so we want to have maximum scoring for match, but not beyond that. And so these projects are incremental in their scope. That's why you're seeing most of these CDB projects that are sidewalk projects is piece by piece. We're providing improvements for pedestrians, safety, as we go. And it's a very successful program, but it takes time year after year after year, and all of the communities are going after it at the same time. So hopefully we're successful. This is prospective, so this is an application that gets put in now, and then next year we find out if we get it or not. this coming year, while we're seeing if we get this one, we'll be building the one that we were successful on last year. And I just drove by and saw the one that we did 2 cycles ago and saw people using it. So
What's the one coming up? Remind me.
20th Street from the railroad tracks to E, and then Washougal River Road, there's a missing section from G to H, or G to I. No, it's F to H. And then north side of I Street to Elizabeth Park, little section just west of Washougal River Road. Carry that all the way to the park.
So on your consent agenda tonight is a consent item to set 2 public meetings, which are a requirement for submitting our application. The application is due in early December, and so for 2 consecutive meetings in November, we'll have a public meeting to see if anyone has anything to share with us about this application. And then ultimately, at that second meeting, there would be a request for you to authorize the application.
Paul?
Will the, not only the abutting property owners be notified of the public hearings, but also some distance from the project so that, I mean, on this I Street thing, this to the park, this year, we had people who said they didn't hear about it until the project was posted for construction. And I just want to make sure that people have an adequate chance to come to the public hearing if they have an interest.
Right. We are not required to do anything, but we are going to do something. Whether we will do something like we do for land use decisions, where we're required to send something out to a radius, we're still talking about how to make sure we let people know, posting and some information, but that would be the goal. Most of the time, we're expecting that folks are going to be really happy that that their infrastructure is going to be improved. But from time to time, there would be individual concerns about the impact of a sidewalk on what's happening there. And that's the part we want to take care of. And
I would certainly think posting will go a long way.
right. And then we can provide contact information to the team, and folks can call in with any questions that we have. Maybe the newspaper can run something, our website. So I think we have, but yes, we were cognizant of that after that experience with those 2 property owners who were very gracious as they came to us with their concerns, but it clued us in that sometimes there are concerns with these types of improvements.
Right.
What do you mean by posting?
A sign, project sign.
In the neighborhood?
Yeah, talking about the meeting, talking about who to contact for questions.
A lot of mail just
Goes
goes
right
into recycling.
Other questions for Rob or Trevor? Okay, thank you both.
Thank you.
Jennifer, you're up. Good evening.
Good evening.
You've got some utility rate changes for us.
Yeah, Trevor thought that we should bring these forward for you. Is it in the packet? Is that where it is? So we've had several discussions on the utility rates, presentations with FCS, and so what we have brought forward tonight in the packet is essentially bringing forward FCS's recommendations for the water utility tax. We can start there. With the legislative changes, we can change the 20.4% tax back down to the 10% that it's historically been in the past. So in the packet, you'll notice there's a little memorandum and then the code and how we propose to change it. The tax is pretty straightforward, just changing that back to the 10%. For the water code, the tables are completely different. So what we're proposing to do first is to make this small minor change in the wording, since we don't do the solid waste anymore. And we'll change that to stormwater for the billing process to show that water, sewer, and stormwater billings are handled through the same office. Since we have the code open, we figured we would make that small change at the same time. And then the first slide that's coming through very nicely on the overhead is the inside proposals, and then the high volume proposal as well. And again, it shouldn't look different than what Karen's already presented in prior workshops. So we plan to just include this in the code and pull the other part out. And then same for the outside city limit rates. There is what FCS is proposing with the phase-in approach. So essentially, we'll just take out the current tables in the water and put those new ones in with the 3% per year for water.
That's across the board.
They across the board.
It varies depending upon, right.
And then it'll affect the individual users as they've proposed. On the sewer side, similar idea. We have 0% increases for sewer across the board for 14 through 16, and then 2% for 17 and 18. So we went ahead and wanted to clarify the code a little bit for the table. If something's not specifically identified in the chart, then the base charge would be the single family rate, just to clarify that. That's the intent in how we've been interpreting it. So then we have the table, and these are the new rates. You'll see the single family monthly, bi-monthly charge of $113.20 stays constant through the 3 years, and then goes up 2% in 17, 2% in 18, and those carry forward for all of those. We also have a few other minor changes in yellow for clarifying for billing purposes.
What is federal HUD ELIL?
It's the extremely low income level on the Housing and Urban Development federal site. It has a little note disclosure at the bottom of the table that talks about what those two mean.
Thank you.
That's for our low income individuals. That was the what we wanted to go by to keep it constant for all of those low income folks to apply.
We made that change early
This year.
You recall, we had a different way that we made that notation, and this way we don't have to, we can just track with HUD.
Versus changing it.
And we don't have to change it ourselves.
Okay, Mayor. So if I keep my unit usage down to the, below the minimum, the recharge was gonna go to 9.
Going to 9.
And I open my bill up at the end of January next year, what's it gonna say?
I'm gonna pull up
Wasn't that prior
presentation that
presentation?
Chris last week, yeah. We can show you the 9. We can show you a 10.
You're talking about water, you said, Clint?
Well, 10 would actually get a little penalty for going a little bit over.
Right.
I'd like to know what it would be for 9.
I think we can do it. If you give us a moment, we can probably do the math quickly.
Because, excuse me, this is what a lot of people in Washougal are gonna be paying. Presumably, unless there are a lot of people in that
Should
9
be.
to 10
Oh, yeah,
range.
that's right.
We have a chart that kind of gives us a feel for how many people are in that range, but if you go to the end.
Just got scenarios for the,
Okay.
towards the end.
Sorry. Come on, go faster. I'm messing it up.
Slow transitions.
You don't have thumbnails, huh?
Well, I kind of clicked off it. User error, sorry.
I think the MIT man might be able to figure it out.
We can do it. We just got to get
He's
there.
got
This is a
his
long
pencil going.
presentation. Here we go.
Burn up the lead.
And then I did that.
Okay, so here's a 10. In 2014, you will pay
58.21.
58.21. Oh, it'll be 198.91.
198.91, so that's about $15 more than what it is this year.
Right, because you provided that $14 and change subsidy from the general fund,
Okay.
right? Now, if you're 9, it'll be just a tick lower than that. But remember, it will be low, on the water side, 61%. If you use no more than that base amount, your water will be less than that.
Right.
What you're paying, not including the subsidy. But,
Right.
But it's
But still paying, still
incrementally.
paying a minimum 9 units though, and
Correct.
that's, I asked for the 9-unit number, and so it should be 198 then. Well,
That's
my
10.
man is going
Yeah,
Well,
to show the Berkeley man.
I mean, the water, the monthly, bi-monthly water only for 9 units is twice that, which is $109.40.
Mm-hmm.
twice 58,
Twice $54.70.
right, for 9.
And then sewer stays the same.
Sewer stays the same,
That's
storm's going up.
That's
So
what they charge on that.
the water portion of your bill for 61% of our folks will go down, the water portion of the
What's
bill.
that, 16?
Because it'll be that 54 and change
Looks like
times 2
16 cc.
versus what it would be otherwise.
Assuming 8.
Yeah.
And then there's a couple dollar increase
month.
for storm, and it's flat for sewer. And then the next year it'll be 8 units, and the base charge will go down and so on.
We are still headed towards that minimal basic usage unit, right?
Yes, at the end of the study period, as Karen walked us through, the base charge will be 5 units as opposed to 10 today. It steps down 1 unit per year, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, and she explained to us why that needed to be phased in order to soften the impacts to other users.
Do we have people that use less than 5 units?
Very, very small percentage. I wouldn't say that we don't have anyone that,
And are they just under the 5, or?
I don't have the data.
We could pull that. I think it was fairly small number percentage-wise, 1.5% to 2%.
Okay.
Now, that's the first 5 years. Then we move into another 5-year cycle after that, and potentially, recall that one of the things that Karen talked about that was really important is you need to make sure that a certain percentage of your revenue comes from a fixed charge.
Yes, and this reduces it as much as we can reduce it and still be within best practices for that concern.
Correct. We are collecting more than is best practice from fixed charges right now, and so we will slowly reduce that down so that we're collecting, I think it was about a 40%.
Right.
This could flip-flop from right now where we're 60/40 as far as fixed instead of consumption-based.
Right.
You guys are doing such a great job. I'm actually starting to understand this.
And probably the easiest thing to say is that what the ordinance will be next week is precisely what Karen described to you over the last couple of meetings. It will do all of those things, and what we reviewed at the town hall a little bit. So it's achieving your goal of moving toward mitigating for low water users, sending the pricing signals to high water users, bringing equity in customer classes so that there isn't subsidization of one customer class over another. So remember, in water, multifamily is subsidizing others, and so they're flat. Multifamily rates for water are flat over the 5-year period. So there's a significant portion of your water customers that are in multifamily settings where there's no increases. Now, there's some adjustments in how the rates are charged that are more usage based, and because we're moving off of the base charge with them as well. But their subsidy will begin to go away over a period of time. On the commercial side, there are customers that will see their water bill go down And there are customers that will see their water bill go up a little bit. And some will be a little bit higher than the class average, and some will be lower than the class average, but it all works out to that class average, which in commercial was about 5% or so. And then for large commercial, we have the one customer, that's 4.5%. And we've met and discussed these impacts with several of the customers, and we'll continue that education with those folks.
Is Amnesia a large consumer?
They're in the commercial class. We only have the woolen mill in the large class, and they are
Okay.
significant, I mean, very significantly larger
Okay.
user than anybody else. So Amnesia is in the same class with all other commercial.
Okay.
I think we were at the end.
What we can do, if it would be helpful, is we will do that math that we just did, and thank you. We'll put together a quick email that shows exactly what that would look like for you, but it is.
Well, I don't think I'm alone in, when I talk to the residents here, bottom line, what's my bill gonna be? I mean, I don't think they wanna hear the sophistry about, these components and all that. I think they wanna know what they're going to see when they open that envelope up. So.
And if it's 9, we can say what that is. If you're 12 or 14 or 16, and I think a lot of folks that are 9, in the summer they're 22 or 18.
Yeah.
So, it really depends on what your usage is. However, if you never go more than that base, then you could be locked in.
I'm starting to shower at the gym, so.
I'm not pre-rinsing my dishes anymore either. Well, there you go. It's working well, actually.
Other questions for Trevor and Jen? Trevor, thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
Okay, third quarter updates.
Do we have that in writing? I just didn't pick it up.
All right. Thank you for your patience. We're going to go over the third quarter update that just recently ended. For the general and street funds, the third quarter revenues are at approximately 65% of the budget. Property taxes, the second payments come in October, so those are only at 58.2% through the end of third quarter. Just pointing out that the governmental charges is higher because that's where we code our wildfire reimbursements. And overall revenue is down 0.8% between the third quarter in 2012 versus this third quarter in 2013. So that just kind of dictates what we just talked about. Everything's tracking according to what we were anticipating. Licenses and permits are up a little bit. Community development is chugging right along, so that's wonderful news. Okay, expenses on the general and street side are at 65.2% of the budget. The general government, you'll notice, is higher than 2012, and that's where the rate relief transfers are coming out of to transfer to the utility fund. So otherwise, the council budget is down between quarters because we had some election charges last year, and they typically lag a little bit. So we may or may not get this year's election paid for in 13. It may cross into 14 depending on when they mail those bills out. But overall, again, we're tracking right along. Water sewer revenues are at 68% of the budgeted amount, and stormwater is at 82.5% of the budgeted amount. And expense-wise, water sewer's at roughly 70%, and stormwater's at 55% less the capital budget that we had. We had an emergency budgeted for the stormwater account in 2013. So we're trying to keep that separate to keep it consistent to compare O&M to O&M on revenue and expense side. Everybody's yawning, so I'll keep going. So we have cut the Mambo spreadsheet that you can never read into multiple slides. So this is the general street and the special revenue funds. The general and street fund is showing a deficit at the moment for third quarter, and that's just due to the timing of the property taxes. Those will be coming in this month. But other than that, everything is according to what we budgeted. For the debt and the capital project funds, we typically spend fund balance in these funds, and there's not a lot of surprises, or there's no surprises there. The two that are in the deficit are the facility capital project and the transportation capital. So that's spending of the fund balance for the projects.
What does UTGO stand for?
What was that?
Fund 212 is UTGO.
Unlimited tax governmental GO bonds, obligation, general obligation. The proprietary or enterprise funds, water, sewer, stormwater, the garbage fund is in next. We're going to close it out in 14. Again, everything's going right along according to the budget. The Fund 413 is the bond fund that we are doing all the large capital projects out of for the utilities. The internal service and agency funds are also according to budget. The rolling stock, again, we spend the fund balance for the most part on that one. We haven't done the transfer for the loan for the perpetual care fund yet for the niche walls, but we will do that probably this last quarter. And we've had a few donations come in to the low income fund.
We have.
We have.
Oh, how much?
At the end of the third quarter, it was just at $250.
That's great.
But we're getting the word out, and folks are stepping up.
Yeah.
For our local government investment pool savings, the third quarter rates look like they're a little bit lower than what it was at the beginning of the year. So, earning. So that's how much we've brought in for our very liquid accounts. Again, that's money that we can pull as we need it right away. There's no penalties or anything to pull it from the investment. Our longer-term bonds are they're starting to decrease in amount because the bond funds are coming due, and we're putting them into the local government investment pool to be able to fund the capital projects as the bills come in. So we're not reinvesting those at this time because the projects are in full swing and we want to be able to pay for them, not have any penalties or anything. So total earnings for the year from those bonds are at $31,000. And that's it for the third quarter. Tracking right along.
May I ask some non-accounting questions or budgetary questions that I'm not sure I understand what's going on here? You mentioned overall our revenues are down a little less than 1% from this time last year, 0.8%.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like there's a number of reasons for that. For example, the property taxes, normally we should be at like 75%, 3/4 of the year, we should have 75% of our revenue, and we're running 10% below that, but I guess that's typical.
Correct.
Our property tax is only 58%, and that's because?
The bulk, they come in April and October, or when they were due, so they'll be coming in this month.
Okay. Leasehold and gambling taxes, probably the same way. It's not a lot of money there anyway.
Right.
Indirect cost recovery.
We do that transfer, it's the internal cost plan, and we do it every 6 months.
Okay.
So we just haven't done the end of the year yet. We'll
Okay.
do that at the end.
And, okay, the other revenue sources transfer is the same way, it's only 13%.
Correct. So that's the transfer from the Fund 125 that's budgeted.
Okay.
And we'll do that at the end of the
So you see no
year.
reason to be particularly concerned that our revenues are slightly down overall from last year?
Most of it's just timing.
Okay.
Our property tax levy was slightly lower in 13 than it was in 12
Okay.
with the capped rate.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Other questions for Jen on third quarter? Okay, let's go into 2014 budget.
That one is in here. All right, we're cruising right along. So we uploaded the budget document into the Dropbox over the weekend, and it is bookmarked. We'll talk about that a little bit more. So this presentation, we're going to go over the mayor's preliminary budget. We'll talk a little bit about the discussions that we've already had on the budget to date, present it, and then we'll talk about the next steps. So you'll remember that throughout the year so far at various workshops, the department heads have been coming in and walking through the 2013 budget to help support the 2014 budget coming through. In June and July, we kind of gave a 2014 overview with our budget approach and levy information. September 23rd, we provided the high-level information, and then I believe on the 14th is when we actually discussed it. So all these things have been leading to this moment where we give you the big, massive document and then kind of walk you through it. This presentation tonight doesn't have all of the details that it did last weekend. We kind of did the last weekend, sorry. Last meeting, we didn't meet last weekend, last meeting on the 14th. We did a fund-by-fund snapshot and kind of walk through what the expectations are for the budget. So tonight we'll probably we're going to give a high-level update. Anything that's changed we're going to talk about, and then next steps. That makes sense. And answer any questions that you may already have. So just as a reminder for the key assumptions for the 2014 budget, we constrained the baseline expenses. We were conservative with our revenue estimates. We're maintaining current service levels, and we're still continuing to do strategic investments in the community. We're continuing to operationally fund the ER&R funds according to the schedule, the $30,000 into the transportation, building, and capital funds. And then this is a new bullet that we'll talk about tonight, is the additional funding to the pavement management program of $45,000. The property tax assumption that we're utilizing for the proposed budget before you, our AV increased roughly 9%, and there is about 1.5% new construction. So the estimate that we have before you tonight is utilizing, there's a small amount of bank capacity available in the current rate that we have in the budget of 0.6%. And we're also assuming that the 1% increase will be included as well. So the overall 2014 levy that we are proposing tonight is $111,000 higher than 2013, or 3.1%. Before you ask what is comprised of that 3.1%, we have it for you. So of the $111,000, $52,000 of that is attributed to the new construction. The banked capacity, due to the increasing AV, is at $23,000 roughly, and then the 1% increase in the levy is roughly $36,000. So, go ahead.
Can you predict what the impact will be on the average homeowner?
It's coming up in just a few slides.
You're way ahead of me. Okay.
So the fact that we were capped last year and the AV has increased has given us the capacity to have that banked money available and the 1% increase available for both the EMS and the general property tax levy. So, as Dave was asking, the effect for a typical residence at $240,000 worth of value in 2014, the increase in taxes between 12 and 14 is roughly $12 a year. And that just has to do with being capped last year with a lower value. Now they have a higher value and a lower rate. So that's how that comes into play. And then we compared it back to the same typical residence at 2006. So we have all of the information of rates and how much they paid over the years. And so we compared it back to 2006, which is the pre-lid lift number, because then we did the lid lift and it skewed things, and we had the parallel universe and all those fun conversations that we've had. So we thought we would stick to something easier and go back to that 2006. And had we just added new construction and 1% every year since then, the estimated taxes for this residence are only $51 more than in 2006, which is less than 1%, if that makes sense. If I explain that. But it's, so it's a good thing for the city and a good thing for the citizens, because they didn't get that hit every year, or the cumulative. So based on the information from the assessor's office that we got since the last meeting, our projected deficit prior to the fund closeouts was 186,000 negative. So then we did the fund closeouts of 231, which gave us the remaining $45,000. So based on conversations with the pavement management program needing $350,000 to maintain our pavement, that's where we're proposing to include that additional $45,000 in this budget. So that'll be a topic for discussion.
So that'll raise it to 195?
Correct. Not quite the 350, but we're getting closer.
Is 350 the amount that the gentleman suggested we needed to spend?
That, yes, an additional 200,000 to take it from 150 to 350 was necessary to keep our score, our index, from getting below 80, I believe. We're at 80 something, so we would lose a little ground but stay within a good industry standard. So that's a conversation, I think, for moving into next year. But at least incrementally, the property tax news was just a little bit better than what we were sharing with you a month ago. You know, a month ago, even 2-3 weeks ago, it's estimates. And then we get updated information from the assessor. They've been much better this cycle, and we're very grateful to the assessor and his staff for that. Very grateful. And the news was just a little bit better, so that gave us a little bit of room, and our sense from the council was the highest priority was that for that amount, you know, for 45,000, that could incrementally be added there.
Okay. So with the new proposed budget, I've updated our long-range forecast with the actuals for 12, what you've seen, the estimate for 13, what you've seen, and then the numbers were the net effect of adding in the fund closures to get to a balanced budget. And then you can see how that carries forward into the future. Our revenue growth estimates are at 2.7%, and then the expense growth side is at 4.2%, and that's weighted across benefits, inflation, step increases, and those types of things in expense. And then the sales tax growth, property tax growth, and the utility taxes for revenues. On the utility side, for the revenues for the utilities, the water and sewer rates we adjusted per the proposed plan that has come out from FCS. And then the stormwater rates we kept at the old plan that is still in effect. Expenditures, we're holding the line in water sewer. We're increasing 1 FTE in the storm, which is per the original plan that the 14.5% rates support. And then we're following the capital facility plans for the bond funds. So that brings us to the comparison between years of the revenues. We have changed a little bit of the coding of some of the franchise fees, so you'll notice that the line licenses and permits has fluctuated between the 3 years. The budget for 13 did not include the franchise fees. That should go there because they're kind of a permit to the treatment, or not treatment, but the garbage location for the trucks for Waste Connections. So we've redefined where we're depositing some of those things, and we've added back in the fee holiday credits, because in 13 we had, I believe it was 61,000 in holiday credits that we were anticipating less revenue in that line item. So that's kind of the big one that jumps out. So that's also why the utility taxes have gone down more than just the 10% from the decrease in the tax for the hydrant costs. Because some of those costs were being counted for under utility taxes, and now they're under licenses and permits. But other than that, it's tracking along. The $3.7 million in property taxes agrees back to what we've just discussed. Slight increase in sales tax. Our state shared revenues are down a little bit based on guidance from MRSC. And the fund closures are in that other revenue sources transfers in. That is comprised of the Fund 125 EMS transfer and then the 2 fund closeouts, which gets us to the $10.9 million.
Question. Good. All right, I understand the utility taxes, that big decrease, a lot of it's the fire hydrant issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
You were saying more, and there's some additional that's coming in through the license and permits section.
Correct. So in
Can you explain that again?
it's the fees to the waste connection to the dump, transfer station. Sorry, no, I can't remember. I had it earlier, and they pay us a monthly amount, and so we're putting it in that line item per the proper bars coding versus under utility taxes.
Okay.
Transfer station.
So what would our utility taxes be if you took those those factors out? Would they be going up?
The water one, if you compare 10% across the board versus the 20.4, they would go up in accordance with the rates.
Higher rates.
So the sewer one, it will not go up this year because the rates aren't going up. And we've actually, on the utility side, the sewer revenue collections aren't matching the budget. They're slightly under. So we've budgeted a little bit less in sewer utility tax to match that.
Okay.
I think Northwest Natural, a little bit lower year over year, we're proposing, because
Last year they went down 9%, so we had to decrease that one too.
their rates went down, so our revenue,
Mhm.
utility tax from that will go down a little bit.
Just a question, I assume the ordinance is written in a way that's a tax on Northwest Natural as a utility and their gross receipts or some other term like that. And it's not like we're taxing individual customer, we impose the tax on.
Correct. It's on the gross sales of the purveyor of the utility.
Right, okay, the question is, the utility tax that we collect from them, do we tax that as well?
Tax
We
to
tax the
yeah.
tax.
Because this is an issue I have to deal with, I'm just curious.
It's not counted as revenue to the utility fund, so it wouldn't be
So you don't tax it?
correct.
All right.
Unless you tell me different later, I guess.
No. Ordinance can be phrased differently.
Okay. Anything else? All right, that brings us to the expenses. For the most part, we're tracking some of the big things that jump out. Obviously, the finance is going up, and that's with the inclusion of the IT department coming in-house. So on the flip side, the general government side has gone down, partly because of the IT change and partly because that's where we counted for the $500,000 rate relief was there as well. But other than that, things are tracking right along. Unless you have any questions? All right. For the utilities, this is where you can see that the sewer sales were budgeting a little bit less in 14. And then water is going up 3%, so that's a little higher. And then the expenditures are just subtotaled at almost 6.1 million to go along with what we've received from FCS. Storm, same scenario. The revenues are going up based on the rate schedule. And then the budgets and the expenditures include the additional FTE, which is in the rate plan. For the other funds, I have the REIT 1 and REIT 2 because we've added the additional $45,000 to the program. So we're going to continue to use the restricted revenues for the bond payments for the downtown. and then the pavement management program at $195,000.
You know that FTE go into effect?
I would assume it would be effective as of January 1 for storms.
Start.
Right, it'd be
You
effective,
hire-
would be effective with the 2014 budget. As soon as if the council passes the budget with that position, we would begin recruiting right away so that we could bring it online as quickly as we can.
Take a
But the
couple weeks.
funding, it will take more than a couple of weeks.
Month, 2 months?
Yes, more like 2 months, yeah. And then the funding's available January 1. So the person might not start until, February or March, depending on where they're coming from.
Yeah.
I missed it. Which position is this?
Stormwater.
There's a stormwater, the rate study that FCS did included an additional FTE for 2015.
I got it.
I'd
14,
back up.
sorry, wrong year. I'm already moving on to the 15 budget. Some of the other highlights from the funds that we've talked about in previous meetings, we're replacing the HVAC and roof at the community center to extend the building life. That's through the Building Capital Project Fund, the CDBG project that Rob talked about tonight. We have several parks acquisitions that we're actively pursuing. That's included in the PIF budget, the park impact fee. We talked about the Safe Routes to School project last meeting, and then the Evergreen and 32nd Street intersection project. And then with the hotel, motel, lodging tax dollars, we are working on pursuing more tourism through tourism promotion and getting additional exciting opportunities going there. That brings us to the next steps. In the consent agenda tonight at the actual council meeting, you'll see that you're setting public hearings for the budget on the property taxes, EMS levies. So all three of those will be on consent. I think we've lumped the property tax and EMS levy together, so they're probably just two line items. But there will be two resolutions for those, and then the ordinance for the budget. November 4th, we'll have a budget workshop. It'll be time for council questions that if you have more between now and then, you can either email me or we can talk about them there. November 9th will be our budget town hall. And then November 12th, which is a Tuesday, we'll have our public hearings for the property tax levies and then the budget as well. Possible continuance dates will be the 18th, December 2nd, December 9th, 16th. And then if the ad valorem, which needs to be approved by November 30th, isn't adopted on one of those prior dates, then the 25th could be called as a special meeting to do that within the deadline. As I mentioned, the budget is in the Dropbox. If you open it and I annotate, you will see that it's bookmarked and easily navigatable, is my hope, to where you can go through the bookmarks and get to where you want to look. Make any notes of questions that you might have. I didn't provide hard copies, but if you would like one printed out, there are some out on the table, and if they're not, I can provide one for you.
What's the title of the document? Proposed
20.
budget?
It should be in the
2014 proposal.
workshop.
And it's a PDF.
It's a PDF file. There it is.
And if you
Voila.
click that, and then
Open
open
it.
it, and I annotate.
Voila. Thank you.
You wanna do that?
And if it's
We can show you
downloading
at the
slowly, you may be on the wrong, you don't want to be on airspeed, it'll take forever to download, so. As Brent can attest to. But with that, I will open it up for questions that you may already have.
Are those paper budgets available tonight?
There are some out on the counter, and if there aren't, I can print one for you if you would like a hard copy.
I would very much. I'd like to take it with me.
Okay.
Great.
I'm going to be out of town for a week.
I also would like a hard copy.
Okay.
I picked one up.
Okay.
There were some out there. I don't know if you
Yeah,
saw
I don't know
them
if there's any.
Questions for Jen?
I will
Grab
check and make some more.
So certainly let Jen know if you need, if other folks want printed ones that you don't have to print yourself, and you can go through them and
Yeah.
get ready for a workshop next week.
Okay.
If you do think of questions as you're reviewing, and email Jen, we can collect those questions and share with everybody during the workshop on the 4th as well, as replying to emails too.
Since you brought them in. Anyone else? I have one more. Do I hear a dollar?
Is there a test on Friday?
Nope.
There could be.
Nope.
All right, no. Thank you.
This is great, thank you.
Thanks,
Oh,
Jen. Okay, with that, we are around to public
haven't seen
comments.
Trent on
Anybody
the
from the
12th,
public
so-
that would like to comment to council? Margaret?
have to get me a substitute.
Council and citizens, I'm Margaret Tweet, and I'm from Camas. And I've been following CTRAN and the Regional Transportation Council for a couple of years, and I'm concerned that contractor interests are driving our transportation spending, not the bona fide needs of residents. Washougal supposedly supported light rail in 2008, but there are no public records of discussion or action taken by this city council at any of your open public meetings in 2008. In November 2012, voters in all Clark County cities rejected exorbitant light rail on the I-5 bridge and bus rapid transit, 56.51% rejected. Yet in October, Camas City Councilor Melissa Smith voted to place bus rapid transit on the top of the transportation list, $2 million out of $12 million in funding. Other more urgent projects or transit needs on the east side were overridden by BRT. I went to the Camas City Council in September to urge Councilor Smith to honor our 2012 vote against BRT and to wait for the results of this November's vote on BRT. And I also went to the RTC meeting to urge the RTC board not to act prematurely, but to no avail. Councilor Smith voted for BRT anyway. There was no reason to fund BRT in total disregard of the voters. The rosy predictions for bus rapid transit are based on supposed needs in 2030 or maybe 2035, and our current bus service is working well. I've observed the routes morning through evening on weekdays and saw no riders turned away. And there's a graph of CTRAN's own data presented at a CTRAN meeting that shows the buses rarely reach capacity when riders are forced to stand for short segments of the route. Other transportation projects in Southwest Washington serving many more residents should be a higher priority. Improved bus and van service on the east side should be a higher priority. And so I strongly object to that, and I want to thank Connie Jo Freeman for not supporting contracts for bus rapid transit or light rail against our vote. I also brought with you a policy that I was at the meeting in 2011 where there was significant CTRAN discussion about a policy not to spend any CTRAN tax dollars on light rail. And they also have a policy of having a vote on any means chosen to fund light rail on the CRC. But that policy has been ignored by some members of the CTRAN board, not you, but that contract for millions of dollars was also signed in complete disregard to our vote. So we are a member of the CTRAN district, Camas and Washougal. We have transportation needs, and they're being ignored. And all of the money is being funneled downtown into these special interests, to the developers, to the light rail contractors, to the bus manufacturers, to the people that stand to gain financially. And so I am asking you to please consider the transportation needs of our region, how it is we move freight and people around, and to make sure that our priorities are your priorities and that we don't get the developers and special interests driving how our public funds are spent.
Thank you, Margaret.
And I brought a copy of that policy for you.
Mr. Mayor, would you entertain questions of the speaker?
If you've got a couple of quick ones.
One quick one, if I may. Did you mention that there was a vote on bus rapid transit, an advisory vote?
I mentioned two votes. In 2012, there was a CTRAN vote on bus rapid transit and light rail, and they were combined, and that was rejected by 56.51% of the voters. In addition, this November, there's an advisory vote, which is countywide, also on light rail and bus rapid transit that separates them out. and that's coming up, and that was one of the justifications given to Councillor Smith to please wait for the voters. Her response at RTC
Thank you.
was that she thought it was wrong to wait for the voters.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Other members of the public that would like to address council? Okay, seeing none.
One
Oh,
moment.
sorry, Marilyn.
He's small, but not insignificant. I just have a question for Trevor, please. There's going to be on the board up here, I saw redo for 32nd and Evergreen. So I'm curious, I haven't seen any maps. What's that going to look like, please?
The intersection improvements at 32nd and Evergreen, they're going to add a dedicated drop lane on the eastbound to go south on 32nd Street across the BNSF tracks, and an upgrade signal there as well. We've got some queuing issues when we have trains staged across those tracks. We get cars queued all the way back to the state route. So that's a component of the project as well.
Okay, thank you.
What did you call it, Trevor? A drop lane?
Dedicated drop lane. Right now, there's no dedicated lane to be able to turn south on 32nd Street when you're eastbound. So we have queuing issues there. We have a dedicated turn pocket to go north, once you're able to do so through the signaling system.
If you call it a left turn lane like the rest of us do, we'd understand.
That's why I asked the
It's a right
question.
turn lane.
It's a right
He speaks a different language.
Any other members of the public that would like to address council? Okay, under Mayor's report, the only thing I have more for the public than council, just a reminder that after this month, for November and December, our schedule changes a little bit, and our meetings are scheduled for the first, second, and third Mondays. So if you are here on the second Monday, you'll certainly find us, but you will have missed whatever action we take next week on the 4th. So those schedules are all listed on the bottom of the face of the agendas as well. Any items from council? Saul?
Just that what would normally be the November 11th meeting is actually November 12th because of the holiday. That's Tuesday.
Okay, with that, we are adjourned until 7 o'clock. Just one note for council members, though, since we've got through the budget items, our agenda will be a little bit stripped down from what you've got on your council agendas, but we will be adding an executive session. It is probably going to last upwards of, I'm going to say, half an hour at this point. So during the break, if you make plans thinking we're going to have a very quick meeting, it may still be a quick meeting, but not